There is a heavy emphasis on sovereignty and individuality and knowing who you are and what you want. All right, guys, we're doing your full moon lunar eclipse horoscope for the full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra, which is happening on March 25th, 2024 at 3 a.m. Eastern time. That is 12 a.m. midnight Pacific time at 5 degrees and 7 minutes of Libra. This eclipse is kicking off eclipse season. We will have a second eclipse with our new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aries on April 8th. I kind of look at this lunar eclipse as a preparation for the new moon solar eclipse, which will be a total solar eclipse in Aries, and this one being a prenumbral eclipse in the sign of Libra. If you guys are new here, my name is Leah, aka the Cosmic Rose. We do topics on astrology, tarot, and spirituality. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the love button if you don't mind, and you can stay up to date on all things astrology, tarot, and spirituality. First and foremost, eclipses. I did make a video on what eclipses are, so I will link it down below or somewhere up top here for you guys to reference that. Go watch that if you're not familiar with what eclipses mean in astrology, so you can get a wider overview. But more or less, they are new and full moons. The energy is just more potent. A lot of astrologers and people in the spiritual communities know that it is not usually a time to initiate anything or manifest anything because the energy is just too potent. Basically, it's going to chew up your desires or your manifestations and spit them back out, usually not in the way that you prefer them to be. So lunar eclipses are going to be more so potent endings, and new moons or solar eclipses are going to be beginnings or initiations or planting seeds of something. So for this lunar eclipse, of course, this is in the sign of Libra. We know that the nodes are in Aries, Libra, with the south node in Libra and the north node in Aries. So this is a south node full moon lunar eclipse. So it's emphasizing that energy of endings even more so, and we're letting go of something. This is most likely related to some sort of relational dynamics, being that it's in the sign of Libra. Libra is our seventh sign in the zodiac. It's cardinal air, and it deals with our interpersonal relationships. That is why the sun is at fall in the sign of Libra, is because it deals with other people, whereas the sun is our identity or our core selves. So there's a contrast between sun and Libra because they contradict each other. That said, this full moon lunar eclipse is really about letting go of some sort of relational or social aspect of our lives. You're going to want to look and see which house is ruled by Libra, as well as where 5 degrees of Libra is in your chart, to see how this will be affecting you. If you have any placements in the cardinal signs, that is Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, this will be affecting you just a little bit more, but it will be affecting everybody as this is an eclipse. Basically, our expansion in our relationships is going to come through letting go of something from the past, whether that is specific people or just ways in which we approach our relationships. Remember that Libra is also a sign that deals with more so of our one-on-one personal connections. This isn't necessarily like groups and associations that we might find in the sign of Aquarius. Libra is really our one-on-one connections. It doesn't necessarily have to be romantic, although we oftentimes do find romantic partnerships in the sign of Libra or in the 7th house. This is any of your one-on-one connections. So friendships and family dynamics are also highlighted with the sign of Libra. We also have to remember that the north node is in Aries, and we're getting ready for our new moon solar eclipse, total solar eclipse in Aries. And when the north node is in Aries, the emphasis is on the self and doing what's best for self. It kind of does sound a little bit like a selfish energy, but it's really not. It's really about doing what's best for yourself in order for your relationships to benefit. So that may involve letting go of certain dynamics or certain energies in regards to those specific dynamics. It's also important to remember that when we're talking about eclipses, it's not necessarily going to be one event that happens around the time of the eclipse. Eclipses are really catalyst events to set up a series of events that will happen over the next 6 months as we go into the following eclipse season, which we will have in the fall. So if you don't see anything happening in 3D tangible life around the time of this eclipse, that's because it's setting up the energy for a catalyst of different events that will occur. I think something important to remember, or kind of like a theme or slogan for this eclipse or this set of eclipses for this eclipse season, would be, who am I and what is best for me and those around me? Also, we do have a pileup of planets in the sign of Pisces. We have 4 planets in Pisces. We have Mars, Saturn, Venus, and Neptune, all in the sign of Pisces at the time of this eclipse. And remember that the rulers of the nodes are Venus and Mars. So Mars being the ruler of Aries and Venus being the the ruler of Libra, the dispositors of this eclipse and both eclipses are going to be in the sign of Pisces. It's important to remember that there is an emphasis in the Pisces area of your chart, so look to see which house is ruled by Pisces to give you a little more context on that. There is a heavy emphasis on sovereignty and individuality and knowing who you are and what you want. We have to be able to come into a place of maturity in knowing ourselves well enough to know what we need to let go of and what things have basically expired or are past their due date. All right, and now this is happening in the first decan of Libra, and this is a decan of Libra that is ruled by planet Venus. Of course, we know that Venus is in Pisces conjunct Saturn. We will dive into that further in just a moment, but this decan of Libra is ruled by the Two of Swords tarot card. Now, the Two of Swords tarot card, if you look at the Two of Swords, the Two of Swords is a woman sitting on a bench in front of the ocean, and she's blindfolded. The moon is in the corner of the card, and she has two swords. Twos are usually indications of having to make a decision, but she is purposefully blindfolding herself, so she's avoiding making a decision. This can indicate challenging decisions that we may encounter at the time of this eclipse, as well as avoiding challenging decisions or basically just avoiding conflict by not doing anything about it. Remember that avoiding these types of decisions or avoiding these things will actually paradoxically lead to more conflict, whether that's internally or externally. We have to integrate the element of water with the water behind her, as well as the element of air, being that it's a swords card, and we have to be able to weigh the pros and cons of a situation or a conflict or a decision in order to make the right choice from a balanced place of emotion and intellect. Now, diving into the aspects for this lunar eclipse, guys, we have our first aspect I want to talk about is the trine from the lunar eclipse or the full moon to Pluto at 1 degrees of Aquarius. The orb is about 4 degrees on this aspect. It's, it's pretty prominent. And it's a trine, so it might go a little unnoticed, but this really just adds a little bit of depth and emotional sensitivity to this eclipse. I don't think it's going to be negatively impacting us too much because it is a trine. This can really add to things like the ability to self-analyze and being emotionally open or being able to go deeply into our emotions to realize what we need to let go of in the long run within our connections. It can also just kind of add a tinge of obsession, possession, jealousy, Plutonian themes, of course, with the trine, but I don't think it's going to be the forefront, especially in a trine and not a harsh aspect. Secondly, I would have mentioned this one first, but the orb is a little bit wider. The lunar eclipse being in opposition to Neptune. We just had Neptune and the sun come together about a week prior to this eclipse for their annual conjunction. When we have the moon in opposition to Neptune, there's definitely going to be an added spiritual element and emotional element, especially with Neptune in the sign of Pisces. As I've said in many videos, Neptune in the sign of Pisces is Piscean energy times 1,000. So we've been feeling this for quite some time, since 2011. But when we have an opposition like that, this can be maybe needing or wanting or feeling like we need to numb our emotional selves a little bit. So be very careful with that. Avoid things like overindulging or numbing your feelings with drugs, alcohol, anything that numbs your feelings and could potentially make them worse in the long run. This can definitely add to feelings of confusion, illusion, and delusion, and not seeing things clearly in regards to any situation, especially involving others with the full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. Be very careful that you're not wearing rose-colored glasses in regards to any of your one-on-one relationships, and you're able to look at things from a balanced and logical point of view. We really need to implement that Libra cardinal air energy into this eclipse because of all the heavy Piscean energy. I think the emphasis on Libra will help us balance out that energy. This could definitely be false impressions of situations and thinking that our intuition is telling us something when really it's just subconscious shadow programming. There could be sleep disturbances, there could be a tendency to romanticize, over-idealize, or even be paranoid and or obsessive. On the bright side of this aspect, this can heighten our imagination and our creative pursuits and endeavors. Now, the ruler of this eclipse, as I mentioned, is of course Venus, because Venus is the ruler of Libra, and Venus is in Pisces and conjunct Saturn at, let me see what degree this is at at 12 degrees. It's a loose conjunction, it's about a 4-degree orb of a conjunction with Saturn, but it's Saturn and an inner planet Venus, and Venus is a very sensitive and feminine energy. So when we have it conjunct Saturn, there might be some discrepancies between the two energies. I truly believe that with this aspect, there needs to be an element of realizing where our values have been restricted or constricted and where we haven't been in alignment with our spiritual values. This aspect can also lead to things like depression or isolation or having difficulty expressing our love for others. We could be a little bit cold, mean, or there could just be relationship issues in general, because Saturn is, of course, Father Time, the Grim Reaper, and he represents cold, harshness, and restriction. Saturn is also a very karmic planet, so this could indicate karmic relationships, and the theme of this full moon lunar eclipse is really letting go. So there could be an element of needing to let go of karmic relationships. Of course, it's going to depend on your particular chart, where this is happening, how it's aspecting your natal planets, etc. But there is an element of karmic relationships that could be at play at the time of this eclipse. This could also repress our creative pursuits, or we could feel an inability to express our creativity. Even if we feel creative, there's like an inability to be able to execute that creativity, if that makes sense. This could also highlight themes of money, being that Venus is a planet that deals with our money and our finances. There could be a need to just watch our spending, being careful with our spending and being sure to budget and not cut ourselves short. On the bright side of this conjunction with Venus and Saturn, we do have Venus, which is in sextile to Jupiter in Taurus. And this is really just kind of taking the pressure off of that Saturn and Venus conjunction and adds an element of hope for the future and positivity to kind of lighten the load a little bit from Saturn. And because Venus is sextile to Jupiter, that does make Venus in sextile to Uranus. Remember that Jupiter and Uranus are coming together for their conjunction, which is a very rare transit on April 20th. We are going to go in depth on this transit in an upcoming video, so stick around for that. But being that Venus is sextile to Uranus and Taurus, there is an element of needing to change things up or do something more exciting, whether that is getting out and socializing with new people or doing something different within your one-on-one romantic partnerships or your one-on-one friendships or family relationships. There's an element of needing to do something like a little bit different or a little bit exciting or a little bit eccentric, if that makes sense. These are huge opportunities for growth and expansion in the Taurus area of your chart. All in all, I think this full moon lunar eclipse, like I said, is really a preparation for the new moon total solar eclipse on April 8th. It's not as potent as a typical eclipse because it is a prenumbral eclipse and it's just not making any terrible aspects really. So I don't think it's going to be too chaotic. I mean, of course, if you have planets in or around 5 degrees of the cardinal signs, it might be a little more impactful for you and it's going to affect everybody. But that said, it's not nearly as potent as the new moon solar eclipse on April 8th. Really, this is about letting go of something within our social dynamics or our one-on-one connections in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be actual people or situations. It could just be a way in which we approach situations that needs to be changed, tweaked, talked about, and certain dynamics or energy dynamics of these relationships need to let go of and be left in the past, where the South Node is in Libra. So stay tuned for your new moon total solar eclipse horoscope, which will be out in the next week or so. I hope you all have a beautiful eclipse and eclipse season. Let me know where this is happening in your chart if you have any planets at the beginning of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. I'd be very curious to know if anything is hitting your planets or points. And if you guys want to book personal readings with me, as always, you can email me or shoot me a DM on any platform, preferably TikTok or Instagram. But I will see you on the next one. I love you.